Hi everyone, it's Liam here from Rating the Races. So I thought we'd have a look at the final day of the Aintree Grand National Festival, a review of it, what caught my eye. There was a couple in the Grand National even that caught my eye, and future targets for them. The first race we'll talk about was the 3 mile handicap hurdle at Aintree, which was won by Party Business. I was delighted to see him win for Ian Williams. A big fan of the team. A little bit frustrated. It was a little bit early. I was hoping for a good target and a plan for the Temps final next season. However, that still could be something they look at. He won here off 1-3-2, and I think he won it with a little bit more in hand. He got there way too soon, not through the fault of the jockey though, because the horse wasn't travelling. He kept nudging him along, pushing away. They turned into the straight and he got caught out wide, and he was trying to keep the horse involved and suddenly ended up at the front. And, he had to continue his move then and just keep riding away. He won off 1-3-2. Now, actually, 1-3-2 wouldn't have got him into the Temps final this year. You needed to be 1-3-4 to get into that. Now, he's going to go up for winning this race. What's he going to go up? 6, maybe 8? So say he went up 8 and went up to a mark of 140. I think what they then have to do is next season work out what type of horse he is. Is he a graded horse or is he a very good handicapper? And you can start off running in a handicap such as this one, the Betway Exchange Stayers Handicap Hurdle at Haydock over 3 mile. If he wins it, he goes up another £6, £7, whatever, depending on how far he wins by, obviously. And then you can start looking at graded events, listed grade 2, grade 3, grade 1 level weights races. If he doesn't win, then they can look at planning it for the Temps final. So find a qualifier after the November race. Then they could even try him again in another race such as... Not that one. There's a grade 3 handicap just before, about a month before the Cheltenham Festival. You could run him in that. If he disappoints... You've already got him qualified, hopefully, for the Temps final. He drops a couple of pounds. If he turns up off 136, 137, I would be very keen on him for the Temps final. But it's all about what happens at the beginning of the season for him. They'll definitely be trying, because they'll be trying to work out what type of level he is. And he's one that I'll probably be keen on next season, early on in the season, and then late on in the season. Probably not in the middle. Early on, because they'll be going for it. If it doesn't work out, then I think they'll plan him for the Temps final, and you'll probably see maybe a couple of moderate runs and his handicap mark dropping with the Temps final in mind. The second race on the day, just going back, because I did highlight Emertom here, who ran a terrible race, never got going, and probably hated the ground. The thing is with Emertom, he's running off 135, having been as high as 155. He didn't get the ground that he wanted and ran no sort of race. He's not one to completely give up on, in my opinion. His previous efforts, his seconds and thirds, have been decent efforts. He'd been up there. It's not like he'd ran 4 or 5, way out the back, woeful races. That was probably one of his first poor races. He pulled up the time before, but that was in a graded race, the Rendlesham at Haydock. Before that, he'd finished second in a decent race at Lingfield with Metier and Goshen in it. That's not a bad run at all, and that's decent form. That could be where they go back, or they could look at another handicap with Emertom when he gets softer conditions. He's going to drop for this. He could be rated like 130 after this, and I won't be completely giving up on Emertom, to be honest. Just because he's had the one poor run for us, you don't cross him straight out. There was reasons for the poor run. Anyway, moving on to the second race, it was the 2.5 mile Novices hurdle, which 3 Stripe Life won quite nicely. Demonstrated how good Sir Gerhard is, I think. He travelled like the winner 3 Stripe Life, and he did win quite comfortably. I thought it was a really good run from Mai Tai. And I thought it was too good a run from Mai Tai. You may have heard in my previous video, I was suggesting why isn't Mai Tai running in a handicap? I think, if he had run in a handicap, he would have gone close. He ran off 135 here. The two horses, the horse that he was behind was rated 150 coming into this. So if it had been a handicap, he'd have been getting £15 from him. And the horse who was third, he'd have been getting £8 from, because he was rated 143. I think Mai Tai is going to ruin a handicap mark by finishing second there. He's probably going to go up into the mid 140s. If the handicap is a bit, he thinks he got there and the others ran below their best, and he only gives him, say, 140, 141, 142, then maybe he might have a chance in a handicap. But off 135, you have to suggest that he would have gone very close in a handicap. The 3 o'clock at Aintree was the Grade 1 over 2 mile, and Gentleman Demi made all and beat Edward Stone. And Third Time Lucky was third. I mean, Edward Stone's never winning a champion chase. Third Time Lucky is not winning a champion chase. The horse that's the only one that's interesting for me still is For Pleasure. Now, he was well beaten. He was expected to be well beaten. His handicap mark is 137. If it had been a handicap with Edward Stone, with Gentleman Demi, he'd have been getting £21. You know, he was meant to finish way behind. The only a little bit of positive you could take from the race, against Mick Pastor and Amarillo Sky, he should have also been getting weight. He should have been getting £6 and £8 from the two rivals, but he beat them. If the handicapper leaves him alone on 137, or even drops him a couple of pounds, which I think would be crazy, if he drops into 135, when he goes in a handicap, he's going to have an excellent chance. My apologies, I've been interrupted and I can't remember where I was. So the long and short of this one is keep an eye out for Pleasure next time in a handicap. That's his level. Moving on to the Liverpool Herd with Grade 1. Didn't find anything interesting in that race. Okay. We then were a little bit unlucky. He's bumped into a heavy ground horse on good ground. Sam Brown normally likes heavy going. That's why he's gone off 28-1. And he's absolutely walked away with that, hasn't he? He's comfortably beaten Shambler by 15 lengths. And that just kind of makes it interesting with Shambler. Does he put him up for that? If he doesn't, I think he can certainly go close off 148 again. The reason for that is, obviously, he had a hard race at Cheltenham in the Ryanair. He tried to take on Allaho, and he was the one that was trying to get after Allaho. You know, that's going to have left a little bit of a mark, if not, you know, more than a little bit. If you took Sam Brown out of the race, Shambler's actually won it really impressively. You know, we've been a little bit unlucky or unfortunate with our selections recently. We've had a 1.5 with Shambler. We had a 1.21 with Any Second Now. We had Mr. Coffee at Cheltenham. West Cork at Ayr. Kitty's Light at Ayr. You know, lots of seconds, lots of horses going really close or going really short. Both Mill Green and Honest Vic at Cheltenham both went, you know, 1.6 and 1.7, I think, in the run. But anyway, that means we're roughly on the right lines. You know, we're going to get a good day soon where we actually get 3, 4, 5 winners. I'm confident of that. So anyway, just going back to this race, the disappointing horse in the race without a doubt was Captain Nor. I don't think he's going to be ready in time for the Bet365 Gold Cup, which is a shame. That's definitely where he should have been running. Not here. Yeah, really disappointing. That I think they've made a mistake there. However, he's going to drop in the handicap. What is he now? He's only 9. It'll be 9/10 next season. Keep an eye out for him. They may target that race again at Kempton. It was a lucrative prize. What was it, 80 grand or something, 85? That could be where they aim him again. And hopefully, Kitty's Light or... Kitty's Light will be the big one in the Bet365 Gold Cup for Christian. As you know, I also like Enrilla. Just another thing about Chandler. I think only 2 horses have run in handicaps after running in a graded race at the Cheltenham Festival so far. And they were Chandler, who finished second, and Santini, who was 4th in the Grand National. So talking of the Grand National, I was gutted with Any Second Now. Obviously, been talking about him for quite a while. When he hit the front after the last, I thought he was going to go and win it and go away from Noble Yates. If you actually watched the ride, I thought for most of the race, Noble Yates was given a perfect ride. Started off slow out the back. This was Noble Yates. Started off slow, moved to the inside on the second circuit, saved all the ground, whilst Any Second Hour was going backwards and forwards, didn't quite get into his normal jumping rhythm, and has probably run just as well, if not better than last year, even taking out the being hampered last year. It was a great effort from Any Second Hour. He's just found one too good. Unfortunately, he's probably going to go up £5, £6, £7 for that. He was already going to go up £3 for his win in the Bobby Joe Chase. Next year, he's going to be top weight, and that would probably put me off Any Second Hour for the Grand National. What horses could be interesting for the Grand National next year? The first one is Delta Work, for a couple of reasons. One, he's travelled really well, but early on his jumping wasn't great. He made a couple of mistakes, and then he reached for one, and just ended up being shuffled back at the wrong time. There's one point where about 10 of them are, I think it's on the first circuit, just as they're coming into the straight, there's about 10 of them that's starting to move away slightly. And Delta Work really needs to be right on the back of that. Instead, he's actually leading this second group and isn't able to get close enough to that group and hang on to him, which then meant he's made more of an effort at the wrong time. Also, coming into just about to turn into the straight the second time round, you can see he's diving for a gap. The jockey, I think it was Jack Kennedy, he's diving for a gap. Just have a look. It was Jack. Diving for a gap down the inside, and he just runs into the back of Santini. Now, he'd got a lot of momentum, was really picking up strongly there, and then runs into the back of a horse and has to stop. And at that point in the race, again, that's a crucial momentum stopper. He probably, if he'd gone round the outside, might have moved, possibly even into the lead and been going for home. Now, granted, that might have been too early to go, but you stop and start. It's a bit like in athletics. They always say that the Ethiopians do that. They stop and start and stop and start. It might even be the Kenyans in their running, because it's the hardest thing to do is to start, actually make an effort and then slow down, and then make an effort and then slow down. And that's what Delta Workers has been. That's what's happened to him without, it wasn't the jockey's fault. It wasn't anything to do with how Delta Work was ridden or anything like that. It was just unfortunate. What we've also got to remember is Delta Work ran at Cheltenham in the cross-country race on heavy going against Tiger Roll. Now, Tiger Roll, we know, is very, very good at Cheltenham. Delta Work has beaten him, but has surely had a hard race there. And just that little bit of that fitness or stamina right at the very finish, because he'd had that hard race, might have been affected here. I think this is, they'll look at that and go, we could win that next year if we don't go to Cheltenham. Don't go for that cross-country race. Or if we do, not on heavy going and have to take on Tiger Roll. If you took out Tiger Roll and Delta Work wins that on the bridle, he probably, finishes a lot closer here. If they can get the horse dropped a couple of pounds, turn up next year, I think he'd be very interesting next year. Second one is Santini. Now, I don't think he could win the race at this current stage, but I wonder if they continually run him in inadequate races, don't target anything that actually brings his stamina into play, and see if they can get him dropped another £5. If you took another £5 off him, you'd think he would run another big race. Because I thought he jumped fine, and he ran a really good race. And the final horse from here that I'll be keeping my eye on is Burrows Saint. Now, he unseated at the chair, and his preparation into the race wasn't great when he finished third, a long way behind Any Second Hour and Iscaria 10. But you have to remember, he finished fourth last year, travelled really well for a long way. If they run him in, again, inadequate races, and he drops a few pounds and turns up next year a few pounds lower with slightly more cut in the ground, he could be an interesting one. He could be one that, why didn't I back him this year? Remembered him last year, but he didn't do anything for me last year. And then you look back through it, he unseated at the chair. If you backed any of these horses that came down early, even Snow Leopardess to a degree, if it turns up soft and Snow Leopardess was running it next year, she would have a better chance. Horses like Burrows Saint, unseated early. Kildisart fell at the chair as well. Probably he could be an interesting one because obviously his age and his preparation and stuff. Manila Times, if that drops a few pounds and turns up next year, it went off 9-1 this year. Probably one horse I wouldn't be as keen on next year is Cloth Cap, even if they got it dropped a few pounds. The reason for that is Cloth Cap bled. Now, that does happen, but that's twice now he's running the National. And he's got so far through the race and then found things, too much like hard work for him. That said, keep an eye out for him for the Elaborate Trophy. He's going to be starting to drop to a handicap mark that he could go close in normal handicaps, where they actually then go and try again. This season he's not been trying, whereas next season I think you'll find that they do actually try in and they don't target the Grand National with him. The only other horse I want to talk about for the Grand National is Kitty's Light. Really looking forward to seeing Kitty's Light next season. I do think we'll see him in the Bet365 Gold Cup. But whatever he does there, I'm really looking forward to them trying him over these marathon trips, aiming for the Grand National, obviously. We know he bumped into one and was a little bit unfortunate in the Scottish National. I'm really hoping that this is their plan next year. So there's Delta Work, we've mentioned Santini, we've mentioned Burrows Saint, we've mentioned Kitty's Light. There was one more race from yesterday that wasn't at Aintree that caught my eye. And it was this race here, the Betway Handicap over 2 mile at Wolverhampton. And there's 2 horses from this race that caught my eye. The first one was Rashoon, who finished 4th and was never really, you can see, he didn't ever decrease in price. He was never really at the races. Now, he ran here off a 99. When he won at Royal Ascot last year, he ran off 97. If the handicapper drops him back down to that mark, he could be very interesting going back to Royal Ascot. He's one to keep in mind. But the big one, the one that I'm really keen on from yesterday, is this horse here, the Grand Vizier. The Grand Vizier over 2 mile was held up. He doesn't want to be held up. He wants to go forward and he wants to make the running or tracking the leaders. The fact he was held up suggests to me that this was just a fitness run. And what was it a fitness run for? A return to this race, the Chester Cup. He got beat by Falcon 8 last year in the Chester Cup and finished 2nd. That was a really good effort, and that came off a mark of 103. Yesterday, he ran off a mark of 102. If he drops a pound, maybe 2, and it affects his turf mark, not just his all-weather mark, if he turned up off 100, for example, 3 pounds lower than when bumping into a ridiculously well-handicapped horse in Falcon 8, I'd be very, very keen on the Grand Vizier with a different ride. He wants to go forward. He wants to be right up there. And the best thing with Grand Vizier is you go forward and you just keep riding. Keep riding. Try and make it feel like a 3 mile flat race. And that's when he's at his best. To drop him out at Wolverhampton clearly suggests to me that they were looking at something and just getting a fitness run into him. So there's some thoughts from yesterday. Horses to follow. I think the big one would be the Grand Vizier away from Aintree. The Grand Vizier for the Chester Cup.